moment, as we know, the pro-European demonstrations are being led by two political parties, by Svoboda and by Vitaly Klitschko's party, Udar. Udar, of course, means a hit, and Klitschko is primarily known as a boxer. In other words, the very name of his party encapsulates and expresses a notion of violence, a notion of aggressive violence. As for Svoboda, as I'm sure your viewers know, Svoboda is at the European level affiliated with various extreme right and neo-fascist political parties like Jobbik in Hungary, the Fiamma Tricolore in Italy and the Front National in France. These parties are always attacked by the European elites as being anti-democratic, anti-European parties whose role should be reduced to the minimum. And it's an indication of the incredible hypocrisy of Western elites that one of their members, the Svoboda party, should instead now be being regarded as a pro-Western and pro-democratic force.
But Washington and Brussels blame the Ukrainian authorities for the clashes and the unrest. How reasonable is that?
It's totally unreasonable. No state in the world, no self-respecting state in the world, would allow people to set up permanent barricades in the central square of the capital city. There are many examples of democratic states dismantling such barricades. In Paris in 2013, when some people who were opposed to gay marriage set up tents, not even barricades, just tents, near the French National Assembly, those tents were immediately taken away by the police. There was a famous case in London of an anti-war protester who after a long time was also removed from Parliament Square. The barricades in Kiev are far bigger than anything that was ever put up in London or Paris. And as your reporter has just said, and I thought that was a very interesting point he made about, as it were, revolutionary trials being conducted. Inside the barricades, the demonstrators have taken the law into their own hands, and no state in the world would allow that. And therefore it's entirely reasonable for the Ukrainian authorities to say that these barricades must be dismantled. Of course, people have the right to demonstrate, but they don't have the right to set up camp in the middle of the capital city, and still less to take the law into their own hands.
Right, but the protest we're seeing now reignited when Parliament passed anti-rallying laws. They wouldn't allow masks or weapons during the protests. Aren't there similar laws in the EU?
Of course there are. In France, it is forbidden to cover your face. You're not allowed to cover your face under any circumstances, not just during a demonstration. There's the famous law against the burqa, but that is in fact, in a sense, a superfluous law because you're not allowed to go about in the street with your face covered. It's obvious that if anyone is wearing a mask, and particularly a gas mask, they are, as it were, preparing for violent combat with police. And we've seen in these latest clashes, as we saw in December, when the whole issue first erupted, how the demonstrators have initiated violence against the police and how the police in Ukraine have seemed to be almost powerless to resist them. I remember seeing a video from back in December, which I expect you showed as well, showing the police without even shields. So we can see that the violence has been initiated
Yes, carry on, please.
We can see that the violence has been initiated in large measure by the demonstrators themselves. And once again, no self-respecting state, no state whose duty it is to uphold law and order can allow such things to continue, particularly not in its capital city.
And once again, how do you think authorities would act in any major European capital should riots start and protesters start calling for revolution there?
Well, as I've said, they would do exactly what the Ukrainian authorities have done. Either they would have powers already at their disposal to dismantle these barricades, as they have in France, or if they didn't have them, as happened in Britain, they would vote special powers or particular powers or change the law in order to enable them to do so. Of course, the right to demonstrate and to protest peacefully is protected and should be protected everywhere. But we're talking about something totally different in Kiev. We're talking about permanent barricades being set up by people, we're talking about people who are taking the law into their own hands, as your reporter has said, preventing people from walking along the street and going about their ordinary business. And above all, we're talking about demonstrators who have time and again showed their propensity to violence, following, as I say, the lead of their political parties, who themselves either directly or indirectly advocated. None of these things would be permitted or are permitted in any democratic European state.
John Laughland, author on international affairs, thank you very much indeed for your time.